Good morning, everyone. You stayed. Thank you. So I want to introduce you. I've got a couple of great speakers. We're gonna run a panel now. So just to introduce myself, I'm Andy Brown. I head up the IT practice at Omdia. We're part of this great Informatech event today. I've got two really good speakers coming out now. The first is Jason John Michael. Jason is the Assistant Director in Austin Transportation, where he oversees smart mobility, P3s, placemaking, mobility services, parking enterprise, and travel demand management. He leads a cross-functional team of community mobility technology, policy, data, and user experience specialists to deliver outcomes that improve mobility, safety, and access to Austin residents. He's also a leader and subject matter expert in smart cities, and Jason's also an executive board member and past chairman of OmniAir, the global certification organization for vehicle communications. So Jason, if I could ask you to come out, say hi to everyone. Our other panelist is Jonathan Mateus. Jonathan's a senior manager of customer analytics at American Airlines. And in that capacity, he leads a team of data scientists and customer insights analysts with the aim of leveraging the power of advanced analytics, machine learning, and AI to create value for customers. His team has been behind the revamping of the American Airlines loyalty program and developing customer-centric contribution metrics for more than 100 million unique customers. Previously, he had other roles at American Airlines in commercial strategy and leading fleet and airport infrastructure projects. So Jonathan, come on out, please. See if I can get this clicker to work. So, technology today is evolving at a rapid pace, enabling faster change and progress and causing acceleration in the rate of change. Obviously, since COVID, we've seen a rapid increase in digitalization. And at this show, we've seen some of the key trends that we're expecting to see at Omdia over the next few years. And they've really been highlighted here today and in the sessions this morning. For example, increases in computing power, artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we'll talk a little bit about that this morning. Edge computing, for example, bringing intelligence closer to the edge and the micro edge in order to do more intelligent processing at the edge of the network. And even things like robotic process automation to automate a lot of mundane and also dangerous processes. Now, obviously, at the center of this are also things such as digital trust, in addition to human beings and actually humans at the center of this whole process. So what I really want to talk about this morning, both these gentlemen are very much involved in transportation, smart cities in Jason's case. And I really want to talk a little bit about, find a little bit about how technologies can work in conjunction with people and how they can make people's, processes and people's lives better. So I want to start off, Jason, I'll start with you. Could you tell everyone a little about what you're doing at Austin and the city in terms of enabling users and processes around emerging technologies?
Sure. Thank you very much, Andy. First of all, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to Austin. Thank you for coming here and being a part of our great culture and everything that we have here. It's a very lively city. Hopefully you're out enjoying it as much as possible. I know I have, and I'm very grateful for our Informatech partners and everything that this conference entails here in Austin. So my job is really focused at the intersection of our community and technology, and more importantly, emerging technologies that are yet to be commoditized into the market. This would be a lot of things in AI and machine learning, none the least of which would be self-driving vehicles. And so just to throw out one little thing real quick to kind of get something out in the audience, my office helps oversee the partnerships with the different autonomous vehicle companies in town. Most recently, that is GM Cruise, and then 2 bot companies that are operating. And I'm sure everyone's aware of some of the other news that's out there. So as we continue to be the Kitty Hawk of new mobility, we'll continue to see new reference implementations come related to how we connect more people and move more people with in a more balanced approach. So one of the things you might notice is that Austin's a huge active transportation community. You can walk around. It's a very walkable downtown. It's a very bikeable downtown. And you can get pretty much anywhere within the city core without having to get in your car. And that is something that we've been working on for quite a while to make sure that we can help balance our ecosystem, help balance the infrastructure out there. And that with the bill and IRA monies that are now out there, that's going to help also just further accelerate to what you were saying earlier, and that opportunity for us to deliver more service to more people and help more people move around more freely.
Yeah, actually, it's quite a novelty coming to Texas as a Brit and actually being able to walk around a city without kind of having to drive everywhere like you do in a lot of East Coast cities. So I definitely noticed some changes there since I was last here. Yeah. And Jonathan, you know, how about American Airlines and what you're doing there in terms of, I mean, you're in charge of looking after kind of customer loyalty and from a customer-centric standpoint, what are you doing at AA that's helping, you know, using emerging technologies to
Absolutely, and first of all, also thanks for the invitation, right? And you know, this is probably my fourth time in Austin. This is a great experience for me. And yes, what we do in American and what I do specifically is a little team that tries to leverage the power of analytics, right, and big data to drive customer centricity, right? And what we mean by that is like we're an industry that is very good, very powerful about transactions, right? That like moving people, connecting people, and managing a lot of transactions. You can talk about tickets, you can talk about reservations, you can talk about many different things that talk about just the transaction in particular. But like we want to integrate all the customer behavior that represent all those transactions and that behavior into customer centricity and combine those things. And just to throw an example of some of the things that we're doing is we are in charge of identifying new trends. And the data tells us that, you know, COVID was an opportunity for us to understand that people are traveling different right now. That, you know, for the last 20 or 30 years, this industry has been focused on business passengers, right, or people that travel for businesses, and people that travel for leisure, right? Mm-hmm. And we create products and services for those two distinct types of travels, right? And for instance, when you are traveling for business, you care about flexibility, you care about a good schedule, having good options, hopefully not trying to connect, right? In some cases, having a room at the airport to meet, right, or to spend your connection time. And when you're traveling for leisure, you care about other things, right? You maybe want screen on the back on the seat, right, to watch a movie. You care about you know, some amenities for your kids, right? You care about other things. And what we come to realize looking at data, trends, and customer behavior is like people nowadays mix more business with leisure travel. So you have more people that travel for what we call blended intents, right? So you have people that now have the flexibility to go to a meeting, right, from Monday to Thursday, go to visit headquarters, right, and extend their trip to visit the place and combine business with leisure. You have people that now now with like the flexibility that technology has enabled during the pandemic, like they go to places that were not business destinations to work, yeah, right? They maybe go to Cancun and like, you know, they're not looking for, you know, staying in the hotel and relax. They're actually working and they're enjoying the flexibility and they may be working 60% of the time. So it's our job to really understand the latest trends and find ways to create products and services for customers.
Just real quick, I got to jump in there, Andy.
Yeah, no, please do.
I think it's really cool. The fact of like, you know, y'all's work over in American is not that different than what I'm having to what we're dealing with in the city. Yes. And that idea around customer centricity is a really interesting term for government, right? I mean, we have a lot of different institutions and silos, and so it's hard for our customers, our community, to really engage services in a way that's meaningful to them. Right? Because they were set up to handle singular stovepipe-related issues. So the whole definition of a smart city is, can you create a more community-centric and be individualized, yes, almost, right? And so like when you bring up things around work and play and being able to have the opportunity to do both, when we look at how things have changed from the pandemic related to our commuter patterns, yes, for instance, Very similarly, it's interesting that, as Andy mentioned, I have an eclectic mix of programs in the Smart Mobility office, right? Placemaking is one of those where we go in and we create a safer, more comfortable place for people to be able to stop over in their trip, especially if they're going to switch modes, right? Like you're going to drive into the city to a certain point because you live far enough away that you need to. Then you park, and if we can find ways to connect that trip in a really nice, happy ecosystem kind of way, right? A parklet or something like that, or a promenade, then that gives us the ability to have those customers, right?
Yes.
Safely make that modal switch, right? And it gives them an opportunity if they want to. It's like, you know what? I'm going to have a coffee, and I'm just going to hang out in the little parklet for a little bit, and maybe take a call there before I go in the rest of the way to my office. And so those are the kind of ways that we're also looking at how we're changing, because we have to change in order to be relevant to the people that rely on our services.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, it's interesting. I mean, how do you guys view the sort of technology aspects of that? I mean, from an analyst perspective, you're constantly asked about this technology and that technology. The response is always, well, it's much more about use cases, and obviously the most important part of that really is obviously the end user themselves, whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, or a citizen, in the smart cities case. So, I mean, how do you kind of view appropriate technologies for doing what you do and facilitating it? Is it the best use case? Is it cost? Is that pure factor? Is it likely the revenue stream and future revenue streams? And especially as well, Jason, even in a city context, like how do you funding, of course, for this stuff, and where the sources of funding are to facilitate these applications and services. So, I mean, let's go back to you, Jason, straight, and then I'll pass over to you, John.
Sure.
Let's talk a bit about that side of things.
So, yeah, I think it's, technology for technology's sake, like we were chatting earlier, is just for naught, right? It's not going to do anything. It's not going to mean anything to anyone, and it won't have necessarily the level of adoption that you're looking for, especially if you're implementing technology to try to make a particular behavioral shift. And that's some of the things that we're challenged with in the city is if everyone drives alone into work, we're going to go back to the same level of congestion that we had before.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
So how do we look at technologies is we have a rapid prototyping program at the city. It was the first one of its type in the United States. If you're familiar with automotive testing, the entire city of Austin is a Tier 3 testing environment. It's a live testing environment. We allow everyone to come in and test in that environment. And then we have other Tier 2 and Tier 1 facilities around in the region. If, okay, well, that didn't work, let's take it back to the lab, so to speak, right? Yeah. And so being able to be relevant to your private sector partners as they're trying to drive their technology roadmaps is important, because ultimately most of these technologies require some type of validation testing in the public domain.
Yeah.
Right? And so being able to provide that level of opportunity also generates a unique learning. I'm 25 years in the private sector before I joined the city. Usually in the private sector, we get the tech about half right, and then it's when we deploy it with a community or with a government that we find out that, we missed a few things. So the last I'll say is workforce development. It gives us a great opportunity not only for us to build new workforce here in Austin, but it gives the staff inside the city the ability to see, touch, and feel and experience new technologies way before they hit the market.
Absolutely. And, I completely agree with that. And I would add that for us, is like, yes, we always have this internal debate, technology is changing all the time. There's always something that you need to catch up on. And there are many things that we can do for our customers, right? There are many things that we can do for our employees. And there are many lucrative business opportunities, right? So what do you do next? What is the best next alternative? Like, you start with something small and see if it works and expand it. Do you do something cool? Do you try to differentiate yourself? And what we have found that is useful is we need to try to bucket things in bigger kind of like groups, in bigger categories, and trying to understand a little bit what is our purpose and what is our big objective, right?
Absolutely.
And just to give you an example, is like if we as a company decide that we want to provide 100% digital service to our customers, meaning that like if they have the option to do everything that they need in terms of getting a service, making a change in the reservation, getting a new product right, digitally, right, then it's easier to understand, okay, what are some of the things that I can do to accomplish that, and what are some of the options that I have, because I have that goal in mind. And that allows you several things. First is like it narrows down the inventory of things that you can go and try. It also helps you with a little bit of the financial justification, which is something that you struggle in these things. You know, this is new. I don't have a model to tell me what is the value of this, right? But like, if the concept is the idea, we believe that has a value, right? And we can at least track that at a higher level, right? Then doing things that derive a little bit from that are easier, right? And then you can have debate about what is the right technology, what is the right approach. You can have debate, but at least you're giving a framework to your thing to go and think about that.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to move on to and actually stay with you, Jonathan, here is at the heart of what we're talking about and what we've been talking about at the show is really data. And in many cases, and particularly in your case, you're dealing with customer data. Obviously, from a smart city perspective, you're dealing with machine data, but you're dealing with data on citizens and other sorts of things. So data's really at the heart of a lot of we've been talking about, in terms of processing, whether we're talking about edge or AI and machine learning in terms of how you can extract more value from the data that you're collecting. On top of that, of course, there are also privacy implications around how you handle data, how you manage data, and that kind of thing. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk a bit about the data side of things, and start with you, Jonathan, about how you guys deal with sort of customer data, how you handle that side of things.
Well, that's a big topic, and you have different angles, dimensions that you need to consider when you look at that, right? Because you have probably the data scientist view, which is like I want to get more of everything, right? And I want to see and throw this in a model and see what scores, what works, right? What is allowing me to segment or better understand the customers, right? But you also need to have you have the IT approach in trying to understand how you manage and minister and like create some governance about the data. But you also have the regulatory approach, which is like, okay, from the customer perspective, you're getting a lot of data about a customer. How are you using that? What you're intending to use that information? So a little bit of what we try to do is like to force the internal debate of like, okay, what is what we want for what is what we want to know about our customers, right? And how can we justify that we can use that information to provide value? And again, that helps. Obviously, it's not the ideal scenario for someone that likes to look at a lot of data and like be able to just like analyze tons of data and say like, I have these 200 variables and like at the end I get these 10 in the model because, a machine learning is telling me. But at least it helps you narrow down and think about the ultimate purpose. And the ultimate purpose is just deliver value for our customers and the team members, right? And just to give you an example, right? One of the things that we need to create as an industry is to emulate a little bit what like other industries already do, right? Like when you join a loyalty program for the grocery store, you're happy to do that because you get access to a discount, or you get access to products that you wouldn't otherwise get, right? So it creates a virtuous cycle, right? Which is like customers are happily giving you information because that enhances their own experience, and at the same time you're getting to know more about your customers and get to test more things. So, but we need to be very synchronized with that. Like I think we cannot go to this world where we just get a ton of data and like figure out later what we do with the data. Like you have to be intentional. It's always good to have a little bit more, like test the waters, work on the edges, but you need to have a purpose, right? And like if a customer joins the Advantage program and download the app, like we can help that customers navigate their trip more easily, right? Maybe that person goes to a connected the place that they're connecting to, and this is the first time that they go to the airport, right? But you can go to the app and see a map of the airport, and like, hey, now you fly the parts out of gate 20 something, right? This is the first time that you come to this airport, right? And you have that value, right? Like, and then that customer is going to be happy and is going to say, well, I'm happy delivering, giving information to this company because I'm getting value, right? So that's how you create the virtuous cycle. It's a little bit of like having like tough and very thoughtful internal debate about what are you going to do with the data.
Yeah, wholly agree with Jonathan there. Virtuous cycles don't just happen naturally, right? You have to have a level of intentionality. You've got to understand what's important to you and important to your organization to then understand exactly what your intent will be, right? And so for cities, it's around driving municipal purpose. It's about making sure that we're providing that level of municipal serviceability to the work that we do to the residents and visitors that come to Austin. So the way that you see some of these virtuous cycles work, it's how certain things end up activating other things in cities. Like 2018 is when stand-up scooters hit the marketplace here in Austin, Texas. I happen to be the guy that was in charge of attenuating that disruption. And so, you know, prior to that, we had been working on a lot of good bike lanes around Austin. But we had gotten to a point where we had built out about as much as we could, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to continue to build at the same pace, because we were getting further out of the core, and we were starting to get into some other areas that were a little bit more tricky, I would say, from a safety perspective of how you accommodate both cars and cyclists in a more high-speed environment. And then scooters hit, and we saw the level of active transportation use cases, the number of trips, like exponentially grow, right? We went from usually in Austin before 2018, you know, roughly about 80 to 90% of all the short trips in Austin. So that's downtown trips between 0 and 3 miles in length. Were all being done by cars. We were the birthplace of Car2Go and other use a car as a service kind of approaches. Scooters changed all of that, and today, most of our business community that's in downtown, they get around on bikes, scooters, and walking around in the wonderful environment that we have. And so, you know, there's a great example of how we've intentionally changed something, and it's had a virtuous cycle related to not only how we've balanced the infrastructure, right? All modes for all roads for all people, I say. But then in addition to that, we've increased safety for our active transportation users. We've reduced speeds, so we've actually created a safer environment, because, you know, good old physics still prevail. I would rather have 2 people in a scooter, or 2 people, or a person in a scooter and something else that's small weight and small speed crash into one another than a car, right? And so getting back to what is the important thing for us in cities is making sure that we're maintaining a level of safety first, and then of course past safety, how do we be intentional about those customer values, for us city values of, you know, a healthy place to live and work and play, for instance. And that healthy thing, you can take that in many different directions.
And I guess on top of that, you have a good view of how many trips are being made via the scooters and kind of where they're going. So you're using analytics to extend to understand how that's happening. So you get a good idea of pattern. Yeah. And of course, you were saying about making it a better place for pedestrians by kind of compartmentalizing to some extent. Does make it a sort of safer environment, and you understand and you can validate that with data. So
right, and over, you know, since scooters happened, we collect all the trips. We have it all on a public website for everybody to see. Universities and others use it to research on. You do a quick back of napkin calculation. When you look at it, it's about 16 million miles of trips.
Wow. On
scooters since 2018. It's roughly 14 million pounds of carbon that have been sequestered and are no longer, because those were all short car trips.
Yeah,
those were tailpipe emissions prior. So that's the kind of stuff that happens when you bring innovation around, right? And you find a way to connect it to the community.
Yeah, and sustainability is obviously a huge question, as we're all under pressure globally, you know. But I mean, also organizations under a lot of pressure to sort of look at their sustainability initiatives and also how to save costs, save energy, and look to greener ways of doing things. So even just, you know, relatively small changes can actually have a fairly significant difference. And coming back to the tech side, I mean, what is it that you look for from emerging technologies? What is it that you feel is missing, or what is it you feel that is there right now that is helping you achieve what you're trying to achieve in both in American Airlines and actually in the city of Austin as well?
Yes, I mean, there are many different challenges, like regarding technology. I mean, there's an immense amount of opportunities out there, right, and a lot of avenues to provide value. But there are also obstacles, right? And like, I think relating a little bit to what was discussed in previous panels today is like, it gets to an extra level of difficulty where you need to integrate different players in the equation, right? And you know, the distribution example in the airline industry is pretty clear, right? Because you know, one thing is to get and seek internal alignment on the processes and the analysis that you need to run to deliver value to customer. But one different level of difficulty is when you're integrated with other players, right? So think about when you need to connect customers with other airlines, right? Or we need to go and put a product in the market that needs to be accessible not only in AA.com, AmericanAirlines.com, but also on other platforms when customers go and purchase hotels and book rental cars. So it is kind of like the extra level of difficulty, and sometimes, unfortunately, what may happen is like you need to kind of like level by the lower standard, right? And it's like a little bit of the frustration when you want, yeah, I have this leading edge technology, but I need and it needs to speak the language of like old-fashioned technology, like legacy technology, and it slows you down a little bit. So it's like, how do you move together and like kind of like predicate and evangelize with this message of the delivering customer value when you need to bring other players that don't necessarily have the same incentives or like the same speed to market that you have.
Absolutely.
I would say the ability, the thing that seems to, when the tech companies come in and use our public-private partnership process, and they look to launch a pilot or a demonstration in our Tier 3 environment that I mentioned earlier, some of the things that we're usually having to remind them of is that, and it makes sense, right? I mean, private sector does private sector things. They don't necessarily understand all of the goals and everything that we have in the cities. And so by us interfacing with them up front, we're able to help them understand, shed light on some of our challenges within the cities so that they can understand, as well as things that we need to change. So with new technology, it gives us the ability to set in new reference implementations, new ways of how we handle data, PII, right, and other things. I look at, most of the autonomy companies out there, they have to make maps, right? They have to make brand new high definition maps in order to have any of their self-driving, self-automated things work. Just to speak about equity for a moment, old maps, digital maps, came from old cartography maps, and so therefore they already had same redlining. We've talked about this ad nauseum, right, about how we need to get past that digital redlining component. Well, new AI is that opportunity. That's the opportunity we have to actually change the status quo, to make further changes, and if it's done right, then it's protected from human manipulation, right? If we make the AI right, and so one of the things we have in Austin, we have a really great relationship with the University of Texas. It was great to hear Vince this morning. And so we have a long-standing contract with the University of Texas called the Good Systems contract, and so it's where we use the different research analysts at UT to help us assess our different AIs that are looking to come into market, whether that's something we're doing or that's something that the private sector is doing in our environment, and it gives us an opportunity to really see, okay, what kind of good is going to come out of that, and more importantly, can we manage any and mitigate any possible risk?
And that links into, actually, we're running up on time, but we got one last question that really ties into that, and that is overcoming cultural barriers, or even company cultural barriers, or even city barriers, right? And learning what works and what doesn't. So I just kind of, bringing it back to a human level for a minute, how do they deal with change and the challenges, and how do you find what works and what doesn't? I think we'll answer that, and then we'll wrap it up.
That's awesome, because that's like a whole panel in of itself.
It is,
right?
Isn't it? Yeah.
I would say that change is an entity that happens on its own.
Yeah.
How you react, adopt, or adapt to change is a personal thing. So for my role at the city, it's about working with mayor and council, as well as other executives in the city, so that they understand what the implications of this change is, so that they can better begin to internalize it themselves as their own executive sort of perceptions are, so they can begin empathizing with that change and understanding it a little differently.
Absolutely, and completely agree with that. And I just agree that you need to have what is in the title of the panel. You need to have a business, right? You need to have a project, and you need to have good processes to do that, right? Because part of the challenge, right, when you have this many ideas and conflicting interests, is like, how do you get people to align towards that? So you need to be consistent with your analytical approach, with your process, with your rigor, and communicate.
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you very much. We're running up on time now. I don't think we've got time for questions, because we're overrunning a little bit this morning, but I'd like to thank you very much for your time. It was very insightful, and thank you all for attending as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.